Hello, everybody. I'm Nancy King with NewView Marketing, and I'll be leading the discussion today on the phenomenon of AR Gets Real, entertainment, advertising, and education, gateway to the future. It's really an exciting time to be involved in augmented reality now as the platform keeps expanding exponentially. According to a recent report by eMarketer, about 40 million U.S. residents, U.S. people, are engaged in some form of augmented reality. And by 2017, they think it'll top 54 million people. Virtual reality, by comparison, is probably about half that, or about 20 million people. So today we're going to explore where augmented reality is heading in entertainment and in other industries, and why you, the Hollywood community, should even care about it at all. And we have an exceptional panel today, all of whom are deeply immersed in the AR experience. So starting with Don, would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you're involved in augmented reality?
Hi, my name is Don Daglow, and I've been in the games industry doing game development professionally for 37 years. And I'm currently working on an AR project. Unfortunately, our publisher hasn't announced it, but so I can't talk about a lot of the specifics, but I'll look forward to talking about the details. I think one really interesting theme that we'll see here that parallels what I've done in my career is I started out as a writer. When I was going to school, I wanted to be the next great American dramatist, which I think about now and kind of roll my eyes and laugh about. But that was my goal. So I was originally trained as a playwright. And what I found was that by accident, I fell in love with the computer as a college student, started programming games. So when the industry did start, I was already a game designer, and it all happened by accident from there. But I found that that background of understanding how to tell stories has always been useful in games. But if you look at the history of the hardware, so I started out with the Intellivision when we were at war with Atari in the first wave of video games. And now you look back at the graphics from that era, and you want to laugh. I can go to a games conference, put up graphics that were revolutionary. We did the first use of camera angles in games in 1983. I put the graphics up now and people laugh. So we're always seeing this sense of what used to be new and fascinating becomes laughable very, very quickly. But each new kind of platform offers us different ways to tell stories, different ways in which to engage with users. But the ultimate goal is very much like the goal we have in storytelling, in literature, in film, which is ultimately we're trying to not only get the audience to think at our very best, when we do our job the best, we're also trying to get them to feel. And when we get them to feel, now we have engaged them and we've established that link. That's something that connects all the arts, and the entertainment side of technology, the interactive side of technology, tells that same story. We've seen this in particular working with a lot of films where I've worked on the games version. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is probably the best known of those, although I also worked on the original Tron way back when. And there, the great advantage we have is we have the momentum that before we even start a game, the users already care about the characters and they know why it's important that they carry out the missions they have in the game. In AR, we take that to a new height because now we're in a situation where more than ever before, you feel like you're there and you're there with the people who surround you. So I'm looking forward to discussing today the way in which that connection we have that comes through all of the arts, all media, how we can take that and then apply that to what we're now doing in AR.
Great, thank you. Dimitri.
Hi folks, I'm Dimitri Shapiro, and I am building a platform called Metaverse. We've been at it for 8 months. Prior to this, I was at Google for 4 years. Before that, I was the Chief Technology Officer of MySpace Music. Before that, I built 3 venture-backed companies. One of them was a company called VO Networks, which was an early large competitor to YouTube. So I like to build platforms. And so Metaverse is we've described it sort of in many different ways. One of them is sort of a democratized augmented reality platform. Some people call it just a sort of a generic gamification platform. Some people call it Pokemon Go as a platform. When Michael Eisner, who's one of our investors, saw it, he said, this is like the invention of a new medium. This is like interactive film. It's a storytelling medium. And it is aiming to make it very easy for regular people, non-programmers, storytellers, to be able to use location and augmented reality and sort of a whole bunch of other things that we now have on our phones or wearables or whatever as tools so that you can tell stories and then bring what used to be sort of the reader or the viewer and make them into a participant rather than sort of passively consuming the content. And so we've been in beta for about 6 months now. We've got over 10,000 people who've been using it. They've created many different kinds of things, everything from sort of parents creating fun things for their kids, little scavenger hunts around the neighborhood, or even getting kids to do things that they don't want to do, like go on hikes and make that enjoyable for them, or go to the mall because they don't want to go shopping, but the parents do, to teachers using it for education, to already working with larger studios about taking their intellectual property and sort of making it part of this new world. So, in fact, I've got a video. Can we play that now, or should we
Sure.
wait till
No, that'd be
after?
great.
Perfect. So, as you're setting it up here, so on September 15th, we created a Facebook event that took 5 minutes called Hidden Cash San Diego. And we said we were going to hide $500 in cash in downtown San Diego. To find it, you must install our app and show up anywhere downtown San Diego at noon on Saturday, October 1st. And not only did hundreds of people show up, so did the press. And this is CBS News coverage. It's going to need sound if we don't have sound here.
We're scouring the city today on the hunt for hidden money.
Hundreds followed clues from Seaport Village to downtown as part of a huge scavenger hunt. CBS News 8's Heather Hope is live downtown with more on the virtual dash for cash. Heather?
It was definitely a new take on the scavenger hunt. You saw so many people looking down at their phones. You may have thought they were playing Pokemon Go, but not so. It's all a part of the Hidden Cash San Diego hunt, where many were on the prowl for the prize.
We are here for the Free Cash San Diego scavenger hunt.
Using a special app called Metaverse for this cash-finding hunt, hundreds of San Diegans stood by their phones for the first clue to be revealed at Seaport Village.
I'm going to try to get to each location before everybody else, so got my running sneakers on and I'm good to go.
At noon, the race was on as many sprinted toward the mapped-out clue.
Jet fighter. Gotta be that way. See ya.
Participants stopped by the famous statue to reenact the pose. The app called for physical activity.
We must do 10 jumping jacks. I'll be watching. 10 jumping jacks. 1, 2, 3.
It keeps going. It's somehow it's stopped.
That's awesome.
5.
The
Oops.
internet connection is not
Network
good enough.
problems.
We
All
are,
right.
in a
Well,
weird, we are in a little weird hole here for internet connection.
10.
Happy hunting across the city for the whole family with $500 at stake.
Scavenger hunt. I want the money.
People move so fast, even I got lost.
Okay, so I lost my reporter early. I've been walking, following these people. I can't keep up with them. I'm going back to the truck, trying to regroup with Heather, and hopefully we can catch up with them in a little bit.
Here's a special clue from a dessert shop.
I went to Ghirardelli and got a soft serve ice cream with rainbow sprinkles on it, like the ice cream cone said.
At one point, the clues stopped populating in the app, and participants took a pause. But not for long.
This way.
They were off again running, making it to the final point where it all began at Seaport Village. This lucky lady took home the...
perfect. So what's interesting about this is to orchestrate this entire thing took 35 minutes for one person. 5 minutes to create the Facebook event and then share it out on Facebook. People tend to love scavenger hunts. And so not a penny spent in promotions. It just sort of happened. By the way, we've done a bunch of these. The one we did the following week in Santa Monica was even larger. And then 30 minutes to create 20 interactive experiences throughout downtown San Diego that had people running, doing jumping jacks, buying ice cream cones, posting selfies to reenacting this statue pose to Facebook and Twitter, hashtagging Metaverse. And so the platform makes it super easy to tell stories without writing a single line of code. My 11-year-old niece does it on her phone while being distracted watching television. Anyway, so that's Metaverse.
I have a quick question for you, Dimitri. How did you get the word out to people that this was going to happen?
We created the event, and then there were 5 of us. All 5 of us shared it on our Facebook feed.
Wow, and you got all that from 5 people, friends telling friends and so forth.
Yes, and then as I said, a week later, we did one in Santa Monica where we had an alien crash land, tell you that his ship was damaged and you needed to walk around Santa Monica to find replacement parts and get there first. We were covered on 81 television network affiliates throughout the U.S. Our PR agency quantified that at $861,000 in earned PR value. Then we augmented Halloween and sort of, you may have seen us in the press.
That's awesome. That's excellent. Do you want to finish that, or are we good with that
Oh,
now?
we're good, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay,
I
Arno.
think we'll get to you.
I think you have way more Facebook friends than I do.
3,600, yeah.
Okay. I'm Arno Harthold. I am the Director of R&D Integration at the Institute for Creative Technologies. That is part of the University of Southern California. What we do is we do basic and applied research, primarily to help people train, educate, heal, and entertain. And while we're at it, I'll show a brief introduction movie as well.
The University of Southern.
Does that show up? I will just keep talking. I'll show this in a little bit. So what we do is we combine artificial intelligence and we target that to a lot of different platforms that used to be just Windows, desktops, more and more mobile, the web, and now also augmented reality and virtual reality.
The University of Southern California Institute for Creative Technologies is a university-affiliated research center working in collaboration with the Army Research Lab. The Institute for Creative Technologies, or ICT, was born out of the Army's desire to raise the bar in simulation. To tackle that challenge, we combined the magic of movies and the engagement of video games with world-class academic research to create immersive environments and experiences. But that was just the beginning. Today, ICT has established itself as a leading force in creating experiences that matter. Through research and development, ICT creates experiences that revolutionize how we teach, train, heal, and help.
So, what would you like to talk about today?
The future will be virtual, augmented, and wearable. Yet ICT researchers know that all this technology will only have value if it is accessible and meaningful to the people who need it most. Our scientists are part of USC's deep and wide-ranging research and development expertise, and are award-winning leaders in artificial intelligence, graphics, virtual reality, and narrative. Their mission is to create immersive technologies that make it out of the lab to solve real problems in the lives of soldiers and civilians. ICT's work with virtual humans creates digital characters that look, sound, and behave like real people.
Hi. Hope you weren't waiting long. Welcome to SimCoach.
They act as tutors, coaches, and role-play partners to improve student performance. Our extensive research and focus on the human dimension led to a series of games and immersive experiences that provide cultural awareness and leadership training used throughout the military. ICT's innovations in creating realistic environments make it possible to create virtual reality exposure therapy aids for the treatment of those suffering from post-traumatic stress. A platform for sensing and understanding emotions in real humans can make virtual characters more realistic, but also helps clinicians identify signs of depression and respond effectively. All this is made possible because we work to make our research a reality and put it directly into the hands of users. This might require transforming off-the-shelf devices for new, cost-effective, and beneficial uses, or deploying innovative technology that changes the face of education and entertainment. Virtual and augmented environments can be used to help people in the real world. ICT has already provided valuable ways for people to interact with digital technology. Now, we look ahead, for the next generation of solutions that benefit students, service members, and society as a whole. This is the power of cutting-edge science, focused on the human dimension. This is the power of ICT.
So we have a lot of research and we work together with the entertainment industry. As Don said, we want to create compelling experiences. We want them to be engaging because that's when people learn, that's when people can teach and can be better. My background is in computer science, and my role is to bring all these different components together, take the research, translate it to actual applications, and make sure that whatever we do works together in order to really reach the goals of each project, which is different for each and every project.
Oh, that's awesome. Quick poll to the audience. How many of you are content creators, storytellers? Not surprising. How many of you are brand marketers? Good, that's great. Who comes from traditional media background? Traditional media, okay. Film and TV? Anything else? I think I've got you all in here. Anything else?
I'm an educational consultant.
Oh, that's great. Well, this is great with Arno here. I'm sure you'll have some questions for him. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so Facebook recently announced a new strategic focus on augmented reality. Some might say it's a powerful move to open up their camera to third-party app development. They have the introduction of the Camera Effects platform for making AR content that maps your surroundings in 3D, and it layers content onto surfaces. And this is to realize the vision, of course, in their opinion, that the camera should be the first AR device, and of course, to create an ecosystem to monetize applications. But at the same time, you can imagine that both Apple and Google are integrating mixed reality to create a new multi-touch platform for smartphones so that any developer can use that. So it seems that we are at a tipping point now for AR technology to become a mainstream consumer experience. So what are your thoughts on this, guys? Is it time? Anybody can start.
Well, I'll start. I think it is a time when we are at a tipping point. I think it's going to take a while for the hardware to sort itself out. Whenever you get a new opportunity like this, a new kind of experience, there are many different hardware vendors who will present themselves as, this, we've got the right vision, this is the way to do it. In the world of AR and VR, we have the issue of, are you tethered or untethered? Are you tied by cables to a static computer of some kind? Or are you wearing the device connected to goggles so that you are free to move in that way? We have the issue of between AR and VR, how VR creates a complete closed-off world that gives you a completely controlled experience versus AR having you see the world with mixed reality with projected 3D imagery within it. All of these things have to be sorted out in terms of what people react to, how heavy, how comfortable or uncomfortable devices are. All of these issues have to be worked out. And the only way to work them out is to ship the products and let people try them. One of the things you see on this panel is we are creators who can work with almost any hardware. And so, since we are not welded to one system or another, we can take the work we're doing and apply it to any of those systems. I think one important thing about Facebook's announcement, though, is that 2 years ago, Facebook was talking about VR as the next great wave, the next big thing. They are now saying that AR is the next great thing. And I think that is a fundamental shift for them that reflects a lot of other things that have been going on that say that VR is certainly a very important and is going to be a very successful and critical technology that will add value many places in our lives, but that AR is a fundamentally different kind of experience, more different than people realize, and that it may have even greater economic potential.
Well, I think we've been there. You know, reality is a spectrum, and there's sort of the non-technological reality, and then we've been carrying these devices for a long time, so our reality has already been augmented. We've had, for example, capabilities of doing things that we never had before. Now we're sort of saying, let's sort of go and focus more on the visual component, because we've got this camera and we can see through it and we can overlay things on it. And of course, we've got all these different sensors in this device, so this is certainly sort of in everyone's pocket here, right? So we're all carrying this around. And if we keep going further and further and further, you know, you get sort of more and more immersive, and then you end up in VR. Now, there are sort of some differences there, but I look at it as a spectrum. I think what's important is looking at all of this as a function of time. As Don was saying, that he started when he was programming games initially, they certainly weren't as high fidelity as they are now. But I think it's funny because I think we've sort of forgotten that, and that we had a marvelous time playing those games. And they were perfectly fine. If we would have never gotten here, we still would be incredibly entertained, because the storytelling is basically the most important part of it. The technology, it gets better and better, of course, but you can do incredible things with a piece of paper and some ink, right? And so I think that we've sort of all gotten, as an industry, or these sort of mixed industries, fascinated by this incredible high fidelity and where this stuff is going to go. And they're not spending enough time saying, what can we do now? With the tools that we have accessible to us now, this thing in everyone's pocket, the ability to now create things like Pokemon Go, right? Like some people joke that's not really AR, and I probably agree with that as well. But you can use it as AR if you want, and as you know, many people actually turn off the AR mode when they're playing Pokemon Go. And so the augmentation is not a visual augmentation, it's actually an augmentation of contextual, specifically sort of geocontextual. And so anyway, so we certainly are very, very focused on allowing regular people today play around with very, very simple AR. I like to joke about it being lowercase AR. And quite frankly, are not spending any time, we as a company, looking at the high fidelity stuff. We are saying, with this little 8-bit, if you will, right, by old game standards stuff, we think you guys will be able to do incredible things, and you can start doing them now. And so that's sort of my perspective on it.
Great.
We almost have the opposite perspective, because as a research institute, we want to look forward and see, okay, ultimately, when all the hardware comes up, what can we do with it? So the way I look at it, though, is what we have now, we indeed need to be able to use. And I think you need to have a critical mass in order to get the ball rolling, and everybody has a cell phone. So we have to start there, and you would want to start there. What I'm more excited about, though, is the future. We've watched TV for so many decades, and it's always the framing before you look into this other world. I want to get rid of the framing. VR already does that right now. But with AR, you can meld that with the current world, with the actual physical world, to not have to look through this little arch that's now my phone, I think will be amazing and will open up it even more.
Oh, that's awesome. So it seems like there's two storytelling mediums that are evolving here, AR and VR, and both have some compelling opportunities for either side. But if I'm a storyteller today, what medium should I invest in now, and how will that change over time?
Let me show you a couple of movies of some of the things we've done a while back as a framing of this question. This here is a 5-year-old by now, and it shows you a mixed reality Wild West scene.
Welcome to Gunslinger and the Clementine Saloon. Step inside and be transported to another time and place.
You're in Colima. Once it was a good place, but now it's a dying town.
There's something familiar about the locals left here.
I'm Utah. This here is my saloon.
They're the time-honored residents of any good western watering hole, the bartender, the bar girl.
My name is Harmony. Well, I'm in stress management.
Help yourself to any drink you want. We'll settle up before you leave.
But there's something different, too. These are virtual humans in a mixed reality demonstration that pushes character-driven immersive experiences to a whole new frontier.
Are you ready?
Hold on to your hat. This is going to get interesting. Meet Rio Lane, the virtual embodiment of evil.
I told him to never play that song. Now he won't.
He shoots off his mouth and his gun with equal speed. Confront him at your own risk.
And who might you be?
Here's our hero, a real-world ranger who's been roped in to rescue these virtual victims from Rio Lane.
You know how many rangers I've killed?
Whoa.
Okay, well, this will go on for a while. The intent is that you see mixed reality. You're in a real set. You're obviously in the Wild West. You play a ranger. You can interact verbally and non-verbally with these digital characters, these virtual humans. But you know that they will never get further than the screen. When the bad guy comes in and he starts to scare you, you know he will never pass that invisible line. So we've done tests within virtual reality, and people just jump back, because all of a sudden he's right in your face. And now with all these new technologies, we can play around with it. So this is a very quick and dirty proof of concept we did with the HoloLens. Now we have a virtual human, somebody who can walk around, who can hear you, can listen, can understand, can talk
Hello.
back to you.
Glad you're back. What's up?
I would like to know how I can be more healthy.
And she can actually follow your gaze. There's
Protein helps
presence
build
there.
and
There's
repair
other things
muscle,
there.
skin.
So now we have a range of opportunities to do storytelling. Imagine that you can have role plays with real actors, but you have digital actors surrounding them that support you. You can scale that over time once the AI gets better and better. I think in terms of storytelling, in terms of immersion, that's very compelling. The difference between AR and VR is that if you would do a role play or a story here, you obviously would need to come up with a story that's part of this conference center, for instance. While in VR, you can go fully to the Wild West. You can go to any place where you want to go. But as Dimitri was saying, ultimately it is a spectrum, and once the technology becomes more and more advanced, you will be able to choose where on the spectrum you want to be.
I'm sorry.
Oh, is
I
there
think-
any
yeah.
other thoughts?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, as somebody who went from being a writer and then fell into the interactive and the game side, this is not, the idea of AR and VR, and in fact the idea of any kind of interactive is not just another delivery medium. This is not like just going to CD to going to DVD. It's not a means for taking the same content and delivering it in a new way. It's a fundamentally different audience experience. So I think question number one is, if you're considering working in this space, is this something that you're passionate about doing it, or is it something you want to explore? You may explore to reach that point of passion. Because I think to get involved, it isn't one of those things of you read a book and now you know what's going on. The people whom I've seen who are able to make that entry legitimately are going to every AR meetup or every VR meetup or whatever it is aligns with their interests in Southern California each week that they possibly can. They're coming early and staying late and talking to people. They're taking notes of what they're listening to there. And they're doing that for month after month after month, building a network on the one hand and also getting to the point where they really understand it. Every chance that person gets, if they're coming from outside this world, to try a game, to try an experience, to try a lot of different educational environments. At a lot of these meetups, if you just go to meetup.com and start looking for them, you'll see a lot of things. You'll have the opportunity to see demos, seeing demo after demo, always saying yes when somebody says, oh, would you like to put on the headset? It can be embarrassing. You can feel like, oh, I'm going to look dumb when I don't know what to do with this thing. But the only way to do it is to put on the headset. You've got to go out and immerse yourself and actually be it, because it is not just a read a book, learn it. It's a do it to learn it. And you cannot create a basis from which you will sound like you know what you're doing and you'll understand how to adapt your very real professional skills to this world unless you've immersed yourself in it. That's what I do continually in a variety of technologies. It's helped me a lot as a way of being able to get a top-level exposure to many, many things. So I think you have to decide, is it something I care about enough to do to go out once or twice a week for the next year or year and a half and go experience it? If you care that much, that's the path. If you're looking for a book to read, you're not going to be immersed.
How many of you are proficient software developers that have written something in AR? Nobody. How many of you have a production budget of over $1 million and folks ready to do your project? One. So for the rest of you, I think the answer is quite clear of what you should focus on. You should focus on things that you, one, have the capabilities to do, or the capabilities and the budget to do. And that is probably not VR, and that's probably not AR in the uppercase. But it's certainly things like AR in the lowercase. Like I said, we've got 11-year-olds telling stories with no budget and no technical skills. And so I think in general, all of these are sort of function of capabilities. If you can do incredible, crazy, immersive VR, that's fantastic, you should do it. But if you can't, you can't. And I agree with Don, you should certainly spend as much time as possible, seeing what people are developing and learning from people. This is always great. But if you want to do things, you should find tools that allow you to do things, and as he said, just do them.
Don, when we talked in advance, you had mentioned a little bit about that people would have to kind of choose a focus from now and into the future on whether or not they were looking, whether they wanted to focus more on interactive type games or more creating an immersive experience. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think if I try and do a quick overview of that, I go back, I look at 3 of my backgrounds just because I came out of school before the computer game industry existed. I was a barrio school teacher in Southern California here for 6 years before video games were a business. And I trained teachers for multicultural classrooms. So I look at educational applications as having tremendous potential. That's a case of saying, I'm looking at creating experience that makes learning more engrossing, more involving, more fun, and ironically, more effective. And AR, VR can be an avenue towards that. Finding technology and people to work with on that is very realistic to do. If you are looking at it as an interactive professional training medium, or like we see the cases with the Army, that likewise is very realistic. If you're looking at entertainment and interactivity of any kind, where it is that immersive, willing suspension of disbelief experience for creating a feeling in an audience, that is tougher, and that's why I talk about having to go and really commit and immerse yourself. But I think that taking what you start out being passionate about, that which makes you get up in the morning, why did you fight the traffic to come here? This is the first freaking session of this conference, and the traffic sucks for 20 miles in every direction, and yet you are all here. You must be passionate about something or you would not be in this room. So as much as we may say, hey, it takes commitment, there's things you have to learn, whatever, if you have enough passion to get through everything you had to get through in this room, there's probably a way to hitch that passion to something that involves AR and VR. It's a matter of figuring that out, but it does mean committing, because it will not be a simple thing. So that's where I'm going. And I think if you start from what you are already passionate about, I think that is going to serve you very, very well, because then AR or VR will become part of your passion.
So where do the monetization opportunities exist today, in AR or VR or both? You guys all, in the end, of course, want to make some money out of it, right?
I'm doing research. I'm not making any money.
Oh. He operates at a higher level.
So unfortunately, it sounds like Niantic was going to be here, but was unable to make it, so I'll speak for them. Niantic is the company that made Pokemon Go. Actually, it was inside of Google when I was in Google, and spent 4.5 years in Google before it spun out and became Niantic. Google didn't see any value in what they were building. And then, of course, in the first 6 months, Niantic generated $1 billion worth of revenue. So I would say that there is some money to be made in it. And again, in what we would probably consider lowercase AR. And they made most of that money by selling these lures, getting businesses to pay to have Pokemon spawn around them so that consumers, potential customers would be sort of hovering around their coffee shops or whatever. We too have had some success, although we're not making money at it yet, but we've been offering a service for free to businesses, and we now have over 400 businesses that are putting, we call them prizes, into the metaverse. So these are vouchers for free stuff. And so Starbucks is giving away free tall coffees, and 7-Eleven's giving away free large Slurpees, and KFC is giving away mac and cheese, and Chipotle, and over 400 businesses, many of them are big franchisees, that are giving away things, and to redeem them, you must walk into their door and show the screen basically to the merchant. I call it Google AdWords for brick and mortar. It's a way to use a loss leader product to get people to walk in your door. And so we're not making money at it yet because we've just been testing our service. But certainly people understand that this is a value and would pay for it once we start charging for it. There are certainly, I believe, lots of capabilities for storytellers to make money in AR or VR. Because if your stories are great or even good, there's a chance somebody's willing to pay for them. And so, again, we don't have it yet, but soon we will implement a paywall where you'll be able to say, hey, I built this thing, a scavenger hunt, a mystery, whatever, and if you want to use it, play it, well, you just hold your finger here and you just paid me $5, we'll take a piece of it. It's basically a new type of app store, but the app is not a technology that you're selling. The app is content, is the story. And now that you've got this platform that can do it, we think there's lots of, and certainly, in immersive VR, for the folks that have the big rigs at home, I mean, these things are incredible. Now, they're extremely expensive to produce, so I'm not sure there's a business model yet that is profitable, but certainly you can charge for it. Anyway, so I think the answer is yes.
Okay, good. Don?
So I think today, looking at it, it's very much like the App Store and Google Play Marketplace in that you have different opportunities to be able to make some money from consumers for things. And very often that money is augmented by licensing, by different kinds of using those eyeballs and selling them for promotional purposes. I think that that model is going to continue and be perfected. As we get into the case where we start to have consumer AR technology that is at a mass market price, I think we will then see a very traditional software publishing model evolve. And it'll be interesting to watch how that model evolves, I think, in a world in which traditional games business has been so impacted by the model of the App Store. I think it's going to be ruled more over time by that App Store model than by traditional software practices. The key thing to watch here is we've got phase one where we're operating through iPhones and through Android phones. And the next phase really will be triggered not by the offering of new technology and new hardware, but by the arrival of new technology and hardware that the average consumer believes they can afford. I did a study on my website. It's called dagloslaws.com is the name of my website. And I went back and I looked at all the video game consoles that have been introduced over about the last 25 years, adjusted their prices for inflation, and then said winner or loser in terms of being the leading console of their generation. There was a price window only about $165 wide that virtually every winner fit in, and virtually every system that was outside of that window failed to be the winner in its generation of video games. And this mirrored the bets we were having to make as we were picking which systems to support with video games in each era of our history. I think that same thing happens across all of consumer electronics. At the CES show, my first CES show was 1981. They were talking about what is the consumer mass market price at which different devices will be able to take off. That's an eternal truth. What I think people don't realize is certainly for AR, even beyond smartphone applications, we are within a very few years, I think, of reaching that consumer accessibility price that's going to create a lot of additional opportunities for us. So I think the Princess Leia moment for AR, when people feel like the promise of that scene in the movie where she is projected and you feel like you're in the room with her, that not only being something we can do, because we can already do it, in fact, we can do it at a level of quality that is higher than what's in the film. But that is not only going to be available, but it will be available as a 3D immersive experience at a consumer affordable mass market price. That moment is coming relatively soon.
So you don't really think that VR is going to catch up to AR then? The price, the sharing the experience, the safety issues with VR. So are we saying here that it's AR all the way for you content providers and storytellers, or not?
No, I think AR and VR, we think, first of all, they have the unfortunate thing of both ending in R and having two letters, so we want to group them together. When in reality, I think we may, in 10 years, talk about it in some ways the way we talk about television and film. Because you understand, if you are doing film, you have one kind of an experience, and if you're doing television, you have another. There's a fundamental difference in how you feel watching Saving Private Ryan in a theater and how you feel watching it even in a great home theater system in your living room, let alone watching it on a tiny little TV in some kid's bedroom. Those are different experiences. So I think that I see it as less of a horse race and more as a matter of our being able to get enough experience in both AR and VR that we understand which experiences are right in each and how to create that experience in such a way that you fulfill that creative potential, that educational potential, that emotional potential, that involvement, commitment potential through the right system, the right device, the right delivery method, the right story, the right characters. Those are all the factors I think we need to figure out. So I don't see it as a horse race. I see it as an evolution of understanding how two very powerful systems can each be used.
Dimitri, you were going to say something in there.
I agree. That's perfect. Yeah.
That was it?
Don read my mind and said it much better than I would have said it.
Good.
As an example, I would completely agree as well. As an example, you saw briefly in that movie, one of the things we did is we created a system that helps soldiers that come back from Iraq and Afghanistan that have PTSD. One of the ways that you can treat those people is through prolonged exposure therapy. So just like you're afraid of heights, in a safe environment, under the supervision of a therapist, you can start trying, this little step and higher. You get accustomed to a new height. You're still uncomfortable. It will never be okay, but you can deal with it. And in a similar way, people can deal with trauma in that way. So when people come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, have traumatic experiences, one way to help them is, as part of a therapy, is to expose them to some of those traumatic experiences. We created a system in virtual reality that has a virtual Iraq, a virtual Afghanistan, and a clinician can choose whether somebody in a VR headset sees themselves driving a Humvee or walking around in a rural town or in the countryside. And the clinician can trigger certain stimuli, like an explosion going off or an ambush. Slowly you can then ramp up, but slowly you can become more and more comfortable and give those traumatic experiences a place in your life. You cannot do that in AR. You can only do that in VR because you want to bring somebody back to where they were. And just to be clear, we're not trying to completely recreate their memories, that's too specific, but we want to provide those cues that trigger their own specific memories. So this means that when we're talking about VR versus AR, you want to look really at what is your goal, what is your purpose, and then choose the medium that best supports that. Regardless, as was being said, you still need to have a lot of traditional technologies to make that happen well. It's storytelling, it's compelling environments, compelling interactions, novel technologies, solid technologies. A lot of game industry capabilities come into play here. A lot of traditional ways, but applying it to your goals at the appropriate platform.
Arno, so this is an example of AR, but you're saying also you have examples that you work with the VR. So you use both mediums when you're dealing with the veterans and traumatic stress syndrome?
Yes, absolutely. We've used VR exclusively for people that have PTSD.
Right.
We're looking into AR to do different training exercises. So this here is just a proof of concept. But like I said, you can use this for role-playing. That also means you can use it for training. We've been thinking about training police for de-escalation scenarios. Domestic disturbance, police comes, how do you calm people down? You can train that with real actors, but real actors are inconsistent, they're difficult to train, there's a lot of turnover, they're not always available. Creating digital characters allows you to have them available 24/7, it allows you to be consistent, it allows you to collect all the data, see where people are doing well, see where they're doing better. And augmented reality allows you to play out scenarios in the real world. And like I said before, combine real actors, who obviously are all way better in AI than computers are, and we will be for a while, to combine those real people with digital actors and create training scenarios that can train people a lot of different things in the world.
So how do you measure success with that then? Is it the veterans saying, I feel much better? Are they finding a virtual human compelling? Is
Yeah.
it turn them off? Is it, what does it allow them to do differently?
It really depends on the application you're talking about. So treating people that have PTSD, for instance, there's a standardized scale that veterans can fill out about how do you feel, do you think about this, do you think about that, and those are all standardized in clinical psychology. That comes a score. So when we try out these things, we have, well, first of all, it's a regular therapist who's doing this, using that exposure methodology. We use VR as an additional tool. Some people don't like the traditional method, which is just closing your eyes and thinking back about it. One of the symptoms of PTSD is actively not wanting to think about all the bad things that happen to you. So VR, the sights, the sounds help you. It forces you in a way to confront your fears. It's a regular therapy session. It's about 3 months, 12 different sessions, and at the end they fill out a score, and they do better or they do not. And in our pilot studies so far, most of them do better, and we're currently doing a randomized control trial.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay, so how does our audience here, our creative content developers, let's talk a little bit specifically on how they could get into the augmented reality medium. It doesn't sound like a lot of you are already in it, but you're here because you want to learn a little bit more about maybe some of the nuts and bolts of how you do it. So maybe you guys could give some thoughts to these guys on how you get into an augmented reality medium.
Well, with us, it's pretty simple. You go to our website. It's gometa.io. You're going to want to write this down, gometa.io. And on it is a button that says Request Creator Access. Click that button and fill out a short form. And then we already have a long list of people waiting, but because you guys are here, I'm going to prioritize you on the list if you put a referral code of Digital Hollywood as the optional referral code. And then you can get access to it, and you can start creating AR experiences tonight. But be
Awesome.
careful, you may not sleep. Because once you start doing it, your brain starts going, and then you say, I could do this, and I could do that. And that's a curse, so I warned you. Yes, it's GOMETA.io. And just request creator access.
Are all of these real-time experiences in metaverse?
What do you mean real time?
Well, like the treasure hunt.
Oh,
Everyone
meaning
does
do they have to be, no, they don't have to be scheduled like this. You can do events, or you can leave things sort of scattered around the world for people to encounter. They can spawn and disappear, they can move, they are responsive to various states of the user and states of whatever. There's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do. I'm not going to monopolize this panel for it. I'll stick around afterwards to answer some questions, but in fact, on the website, there's a link to a Medium blog where we highlight many use cases that people are already using it for, including education, which we think is incredible for this. And so there's lots of stuff there on the website.
When you're looking at a prototype like this or virtual reality, it is indeed very expensive to create something that you can actually release. I do think, however, it's easy to get started. When you look at the Vive, the Oculus, and a couple of other platforms, what we do is we use the Unity game engine, and there's a free version of that. And that allows you to really quickly start prototyping, designing experiences, and at least get familiar with it. And as Don was saying as well, when you're looking at these kind of new platforms, new opportunities, you all have your strength, your specialty. But learning about something that's outside of your core field makes you so much more valuable in general, and is so much more interesting for everybody, for yourself and for everybody who you're interacting with. So even though you are a purely creative person and you've never made a computer game before, try it out. There's tutorials online, just install it, it's free, just dabble around with it and see what you learn, see what you like.
What was the name of it again, Arno?
It's called Unity. It's a game engine that you can use. There's a free version, a professional version. It's a commercial platform that a lot of companies use. Just try it out, use the tutorial, see what you like. It's, well, as you all know, it can be so empowering to create experiences. To do that in a different medium or in a different way or in a different specialty is really, really helpful.
And I think those are two great examples, because even to go back to my experience as a teacher, thinking about something and reading about it or something are one thing, trying it and doing it are another. If you're actually trying something, that's where the doors start to open. And I think these are two great examples of different ways. The Unity game engine is very, very highly used. And as these things go, it has a very low barrier to entry. The other message I want to put on top of that is that the first 2 hours you start with any of these systems may be frustrating, simply because if you're not used to that sort of thing, it may feel like, oh, I can't do this, or it may feel discouraging. What I would respectfully recommend is that little voice in your head that's telling you, I can't do this, tell it to take a hike. Because if you persist, if you look up things online, if you go to support, you can persist through and figure out how to do things. It starts to become clear, and then you get to the point where you can start to create something. I think that it is amazing what little kids have done with Minecraft. Minecraft, at first glance, looks like this really complicated, hard-to-use systems, and yet little kids are creating these wonderful worlds in it. And adults look at them and go, oh, I could never do that. How did you do that? That's because as adults, we talk ourselves out of trying because we think we can't. The kids don't know they can't, so they succeed. We may have difficulties to power through and problems that want to stop us that we have to overcome. But we have to think like a kid and want to do it enough to get past that, because the systems are there. And you've got two examples you've just been given right here in this room that are great examples. The one cautionary note I want to put on that is to go into a new world like this, into a new medium, into playing with a new toy as an explorer who is discovering a new culture instead of somebody who is bringing a culture to it. Not every story, not every kind of story is going to adapt to games, to AR, to VR, to any presentation style. I wrote a novel called The Fog Cellar that's won some indie book awards. It's not a good video game. And so I'm not going to try and make a video game out of my own novel simply because it's not a good video game. I wrote the novel I wanted to write. I didn't try to write a game that would be a novel. So if I use that as one example, I'm a game designer, but I wrote a book that would be a lousy game. You have to go in saying, okay, what is this new world like? What can I find to eat here? What's it like to be in this new world? Rather than saying, well, I'm going to bring all my assumptions to this new world and figure out how to be my old self in a new world. That doesn't work well.
You want to have a quick question?
Just thinking about how one of the barriers to a participant in a VR world might be putting them in that world and then eliciting emotion from them, as opposed to what they're seeing, emotions coming towards them from the different characters. How do you go about evaluating how best, what modality is best? For example, someone who's in a video, let's just say, someone who's doing a video game and playing a video game might have those emotions in a much
No, it's okay, go ahead.
So thinking about how to create this from mass market, how do you go about, since not everyone's going to have someone there knowing exactly what's in their mind and presenting those scenarios to them, how do you balance whether to make this, when you're mass marketing, to make it more like a video game experience versus a VR experience? Or,
Yeah.
and I know that those kind of
Yeah, no, I hear you.
overlap.
Well, the PTSD treatment, it's treatment. That's right, as a therapist. So you do it in order to help people in a safe way. That's very different than creating an immersive, interactive experience that's purely for entertainment. A couple of things come to mind that I have seen, and I think everybody who's seen somebody in VR in the first time has seen. We had a visitor a while back, and he was a nice guy, but somewhat stiff. You could call him a suit. He was wearing a suit, and he was very proper for hours in our visit, until I put him in VR and I showed him a Star Wars themed interactive experience where you have a lightsaber. ILM made that. And all of a sudden he was rolling around the floor and giggling, and it just opened up. And I see that in other experiences as well, even more subtly. I mean, we put this character in a similar character in VR, and she's just talking to you. You're sitting across from each other, but she's looking at you. And when you just look around or you get up, she keeps looking at you. And there's an immediate connection. And I think that alone is very, very powerful. The immersive factor is very powerful. Now, what elements you want to harness of that? Traditionally focus groups and all that kind of stuff you can do. More and more now, capabilities are coming online to do a lot of perception on the user, audiovisual sensing. Perceive the prosody of the voice. There's going to be virtual reality headsets with eye tracking in it. They're looking now also at cameras that can pick up the mouth, so you can feel or you can see and perceive how people react to your content. You can collect the data, you can analyze the data, and see how that works for different kinds of people.
Okay, hang on, we'll get to the other questions in a little bit. Let's get through the other things we wanted to talk about here. One thing I want to do is address the brand people in the room and ask you guys, if a brand wanted to start investing money in AR or VR and not mess it up, what would be your advice to them? How to be successful, how to get it right?
Experiment as inexpensively and frequently as you can. And don't worry about trying to get it right. We're all should be learning right now. And maybe you'll get a hit.
And I think I will somewhat cynically say, whoever is the smoothest, best presenter that's telling you about this wonderful opportunity you have to now get excited is probably not the person you want to work with. If you see, ironically, I think the best partners for brands are smaller groups that have done something really effective already in a non-brand situation, simply because they were experimenting with the box and doing something interesting. And you can then partner with them. You know how to project your brand. They know how to deliver it. They may never even, you may have groups which never even thought of working with the brand and have to get their head around that. They will be less expensive, they'll be more direct, and you're much more likely to have your brand create the impression that you're after through the experience.
Any other thoughts? Yeah. I had been reading a little bit online about some other user apps, Arisma. I'm not familiar with them, but I read about them. Arisma, Layer, and Blipbar. They have ready-made user bases, and they're great for consumers to engage in with campaigns. And they may be 3 other different platforms that you can go explore to see if your brand could be, create some new content in augmented reality. So I just throw that out there too. As a brand marketer myself, I'm always thinking about, if I was running a brand, what would I do to make sure that I'm staying current in this medium, in this platform? Okay, so guys, what fascinates you and excites you about the future of augmented reality? What is it coming up that makes you get out of bed in the morning and jump up with joy?
Well, I'll start on that one. I think it feels to me like an AR right now. If you look at the history of film, the first thing they started doing is they took vaudeville acts and started filming them. So you have a proscenium stage, you have an entertainer doing something that was really interesting to audiences where they would travel from town to town. and that they filmed it on a traditional stage. They started from the world they knew. Okay, people get on a stage and entertain us. And then they added film to record that, and then they sent the films to the towns, which had the unintended side effect that the performers could no longer go there because they'd already been seen. I think we're in those same days now in many forms of interactive media, but particularly with AR and VR, in that we're just figuring out how to use it. And as excited as I am having the chance to see a lot of prototypes that have not been released or shown yet, and seeing how more and more inexpensive hardware is creating better and better experiences that will be public soon, I think that we really are in those early days, and I think the ignition of imagination that happened in film as people started to think about, well, wait, what if we start doing camera angles, and what if we escape that model of the proscenium stage? All those moments, I think, are coming for us, and that's what has me so excited, is to be part of that.
Exclamation. He's a writer. I mean, how do you compete with that? Awesome.
The two things I'm excited about, what they said as well, but then two other things. First of all, that while it is expensive now, costs are coming down. And as I mentioned with the examples, and we both mentioned with examples right now, it's easier and easier for people to create content. Minecraft is a good example where everybody can create content in a given sandbox. But with the tools that are becoming available, hardware and software, being able to create experiences from scratch by yourself is becoming ever more easier. It's really the democratization of content creation on so many different platforms, and that is really, really exciting, because then every technology is about removing friction. And that friction gets reduced to such a point that as a creative person, you can create the experiences that you want or you need without needing an army of programmers or artists. That's exciting, and that's going to be ever more a capability. On the research side, I've shown some of these characters, these digital actors, virtual humans. To me, that's the holy grail, independent of the platform. Being able to have these digital actors where you can interact with for storytelling, for interactive experiences, for training, for education, for healing. I think that capability alone is so powerful that's really what gets me out of bed each morning.
I love it. All right, let's open it up for questions. This gentleman right here.
Yeah, so I'm just going to bring up Pokemon Go as an example because that's what everybody's most familiar with. It being one of the largest applications to introduce AR to a mass number of people and have a lot of people jump onto it, it also saw one of the largest declines of people using it because whatever reasons, I think the main reason was that there wasn't enough to do in the actual game. So my question to you guys is, you know, as we start creating this content, how do you translate something valuable to, you know, a consumer that's going to be on a long-term consumer value basis, rather than someone just picking it up saying, oh, this is cool for a few days, and then, you know, going on with the next application that might be even more innovative than yours?
So I obviously have spent a lot of time thinking about it because so many people say, oh, you guys are like Pokemon Go as a platform. And the last year that I was at Google, I sat next to the original inventor of Niantic, a guy named Brandon Badger, who's basically my cellmate. So in 2005, I started a company called VO Networks, and this was right around the same time that YouTube was starting, and we were competitors. And at that time, we were democratizing video publishing, right? And you had sort of professionals publishing video, and there was Spectrum, broadcast Spectrum, cable Spectrum, and some people could broadcast, but the average person couldn't. And when we'd go out and talk to investors, initially they'd be like, well, who wants to watch video, you know, like leaning forward, and they're like grainy, and then it's a bunch of amateur stuff. Who's going to want to watch that? And we kept saying, well, it's just going to get better, you see? And in fact, I was once sitting with Barry Diller, who looked at me and said, Dimitri, you know, the problem has never been that there's a limited number of distribution, limited distribution. The problem is there's a limited number of talented people in the world. And I looked at him and I said, Barry, you may be right, but there seems to be an unlimited number of talented cats. And we both sort of laughed at that, right? And the thing is, we were both right. There seem to be an unlimited number of talented cats. And while the number of talented people is limited, it is significantly larger than what was at once thought. And so now we have things like unboxing videos. That even then, if you would have told me, well, how about unboxing videos? I would probably said, well, we probably have to draw the line somewhere. I don't think anybody's going to want to watch that. Or my 3-year-old likes to watch people opening up these surprise egg videos. Have over 1 billion views. They're bigger than Taylor Swift, right? So I think the Pokemon Go is YouTube full of cat videos. And over time, about 6 months, we all got tired of watching cat videos. Duh. But it does not mean that we got tired of walking around the world and exploring and being surprised and spending time with our families and getting more fit because we're no longer sitting on our butts passively consuming content. And so I believe that the problem with Pokemon Go was simply that it was just sort of one thing. It was the first episode. It's like when we're creating content for television. If you create one episode, then it's over. But if you keep creating new episodes and your show evolves and you tell new stories and you glue them together, then all of a sudden people stay engaged. And so I think, as they say, variety is the spice of life. And Pokemon sort of lacked that variety. All you had when you walked outside, at best, was a Pokemon. And I think we want more than that.
And I'll take it a step deeper, because I think at the micro level, and we both have ties into the Pokemon Go team, you had a team doing their first published game of that type. They had one prior game that they built on that was a very different kind of game. And they hit the jackpot right out the gap. They were less than 50 people. And they had no tradition of how to build the metrics, the reaction, the experiment and react. With most games, you do a soft launch, you're going to get a lot of that testing while you're not in the public eye. You go live in New Zealand, and you run that marketplace. You get the game to where it's feeling strong and responsive, and you've got more of a lasting experience. And then you go to your larger markets. This thing just exploded in their face. So it's kind of like having the outline for your season of a show. You filmed your pilot and you have the outline for the show, and now everybody wants the whole season 2 weeks from now so they can put out the box set. You're not going to be able to shoot that season in the way that they want for the box set. The meta issue, so that's the micro issue just of how we make games. It takes time to create the longer lasting experiences and tune them. Nobody does it right out of the box. I will tell you, my most famous game designs, my alphas, my early first versions, most of them sucked. It's what you do after it sucks that marks out skill and talent, not what you do to get to that first point. And they suddenly were rushed to where all of a sudden it was exploding around them. But there's the big view, which is that whole idea that we have time for things is gone. As creatives, that era is dead. Write the epitaph. We are fighting for attention in a world which there are hundreds of thousands and millions of experiences competing with us. We have to create a connection with people. It isn't like the old days where 5 or 6 companies in our industry, in the games industry, we made all the sales. If you were in that inner loop, you knew you were going to be seen. If you created something good, you knew it would succeed. We knew how it would succeed. That world has been taken away from us. So be it. So the need to go and not only connect instantly, but then to maintain a connection. One good date is no longer enough. We have to continue to be charming, interesting, and somebody wants to be with on an ongoing basis. And we'd better work at it, which means we have to be listeners, just like good first dates, in our building a relationship with the audience instead of just going out and showing them something and collecting money.
Any other thoughts on it? Okay. This gentleman right here. You in the front.
Oh, okay. I own a lifestyle brand, and we've got that connection with one of the largest brands that sell grooming products to men, specifically beards, facial hair, etc. And they have that connection. How can I enrich that connection
Yeah, in fact, we call them quests, and so there's one metaverse.
Can you repeat the
Oh,
question?
How to enrich communities?
Yeah, how do you, if you have already a brand and you've got a community of people, how do you enrich it utilizing these types of technologies? So the cool thing about AR is that you're typically, even though there is AR where you just sort of sit around your house by yourself looking at stuff and sort of interacting with it, but certainly the stuff we do is actually less AR and more sort of geo-gamification. So these days I describe our platform, even though our website says we're a democratized AR platform, more and more I describe it as basically a geo-gamification platform. And so we've done a bunch of experiments, for example, with retail gamification and education, and obviously all the bar crawls and scavenger hunts and coalescing of groups of people together in the physical world. And so the stuff we do tends to bring people together, and then tends to get them doing things together where they're using their mind, they're being creative, and that's really cool. The other place where we're super excited, we've started working with big record labels. Like we're about to do the Country Music Festival in Nashville with 2 large labels. And for folks that already have, let's say, a large celebrity base, and they have, in a sense, a megaphone on Twitter or Facebook, where they can say, hey, something just spawned here. The virtual me just spawned in Central Park. Let's say you're a musician. All of a sudden, we've seen what happens when a Pokemon spawns in Central Park. You've got thousands of people sort of coalescing around this thing. Well, those people are all obviously into Pokemon. These people are all obviously into whatever this artist is. And as soon as they're coalesced, they may have come there for this experience. Now they find themselves sort of surrounded by others, and it creates community. And so we've seen a lot of this community sort of naturally spring up without it being architected at all. Is just sort of a derivative byproduct of this kind of mode of experiences.
Does that answer your question, or you?
Yeah, I think it's validation of the architecture, creating community.
Yeah.
To make virtual beards and put them on the most funniest objects and give that person a prize.
Yeah.
Note to self, spend 18 months growing really great beard, then come back and pitch this.
All right, another question. The lady with the blue sweater.
So I teach in the CSU in the Performing Arts Department, and I wish I had found you about 9 months ago.
I'm sorry, who?
Dimitri. Yes, you specifically. My students came to me and said, can we use something like Pokemon Go to bring people to our big research-based multimedia performances outdoors at the end of the year? I said, that is a great idea. Let's go figure it out. And we found a few augmented reality sort of apps, but they wanted $10,000 for 10 different questions, and we were like, well, yes, we don't have that kind of money. So we were looking for exactly you. We also wanted to create not one that just brought people to the event, but while they were there, because it's all research-based within our community, that they would play a game throughout the performance, maybe even interact. We were looking interactive, augmented characters through your phone that we would be then dancing our performance with, all of this great stuff. And so I had a student write code, not as sophisticated as yours, but we did end up having a scavenger game, and it was incredibly popular. Like the students, and we're a very small institution. I'm going to use his small platform in my online class to teach about dance history. Are you interested in partnering with EdTech? Because I think that it would explode with college students looking for ways to teach and create a deeper community within that. I just see lots of partnerships. We're already starting to try and figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I have 2 young kids, and whenever we have kids, obviously we start getting fascinated on trying to make their lives better, and so that's been my focus. I think education is a huge set of applications for it. In fact, Chapman University Film School is going to be teaching a class in the fall on Metaverse, and using it as a medium to tell interactive stories. And yeah, we certainly would love to partner with EdTech. That'd be huge.
All right, I think that's it for questions. We're out of time, but I'm sure the panelists will hang around and you can come up and talk to them. And thank you so much for coming. I thought it was a great panel.